What's up, losers? Today I've got a fresh batch of r/fatlogic posts to read, react to, and then most likely wipe from my memory for the sake of my own sanity. This is episode 28 of the fatlogic series. Let's get into it.
UK, a famous, well-liked, beautiful, woman of color, fat TV presenter broke down, saying fat people are treated badly by medical professionals. Just when I was elated, she followed it by saying, obesity is a disease.
Obesity is bleeped out LMAO.
And obese people should be helped like it's an addiction. So basically, she's just told the entire nation watching us, fat people are diseased, simply by having the body we have. She went in to say, there's something just not stopping us from putting more and more in. Feeding the narrative we are all greedy, and all overeat. I was so happy she was using her voice. And I feel deflated now. I'm so fed up. I was so happy it was being addressed. But it's made things worse. I feel so angry now, as she's being praised. My body is not diseased. Thanks.
Okay, so, I don't know who this is talking about. I could probably find out without too much difficulty. But I don't think it really matters. So I'm just going to respond to the post itself. This one is kind of interesting to me insofar as I suspect that hearing someone like this criticize the way fat people are treated in the medical system, while also acknowledging that obesity is a major problem, would make it more likely that people take complaints about medical professionals seriously. I know it does for me. In my videos, I'm often pretty dismissive of the things that fat activists have to say about doctors and medicine, because they usually couch their critiques in bogus HAES ideology, and refuse to listen to any hard truths. In most of these cases, the people in question greatly harm their own credibility, and this makes it easy to hand-wave away their more plausible claims about medical mistreatment. Something that, I must admit, I have probably been guilty of from time to time. In reality, I'm sure there are things that the medical establishment could do better when treating fat people. And I'm sure some doctors, though I'd like to think not many, do just dislike fat people, and fail to treat them with the level of empathy and compassion that they deserve. But even as I say all of this, the post immediately does what the others do, and tosses all credibility out of the window by throwing a tantrum, denying that obesity is unhealthy, and attacking someone who is protesting the same issues for not being an anti-science extremist like they are. This kind of childish infighting is honestly so damaging to any attempt at reform or raising awareness, because it will make the general public lump everyone in with the fringe loons. And they will assume that there's no real substance to the complaints. So yeah, just stop fat acceptance, even on the issues that you yourselves claim to care about. You're doing more harm than good. I also want to add that the response to addiction from the poster here is pretty disappointing. The TV presenter's comparison of overeating to addiction is powerful and accurate. And it will help to destigmatize obesity by bringing it into the broader effort to destigmatize addiction. It's honestly kind of gross to see how the poster attempts to distance fat people from addicts, as if they are too good to be considered alongside them. Newsflash. Addicts are people too. They're struggling with being unable to control their consumption. Just like you are. You are not better than them. So get off your high horse. And stop muddying the discourse with your self-indulgent BS. Okay, so this next one is a flow chart, with a bunch of yes or no questions. So I can't really read it out. I'll put it on the screen for those watching along. But basically, it asks if you are eating enough, and it says if you don't feel physically full, you need to eat more. And if you feel physically full but you're not, satisfied, you need to eat more as well. So essentially, regardless of what or how much you've eaten, you can keep going until both of these conditions have been met. It's hard to believe that anyone could think this was a remotely healthy way to approach eating. Like, it basically tells you to stuff yourself until it hurts so much that you can't keep going anymore. Even if you can feel that your stomach is full, apparently you should just keep eating indefinitely. If you're still getting some satisfaction out of the food, which is wasteful, wildly unhealthy, and pretty much the textbook definition of gluttony. Furthermore, instead of applying this satisfaction threshold to all scenarios, the post also tells you to keep eating if you are already satisfied but don't feel physically full. So if you thought that the obscene binges it promotes would at least be balanced out by some smaller meals here and there, owing to the temperamental nature of appetite and cravings. Haha, no, you thought wrong. Every meal has to be a painful feat of excess. Anything less would be a betrayal of the cause, and a concession to evil diet culture. What a joke, SMH. Speaking more broadly, I think that the idea of intuitive eating generally is one that has some merit in theory. Because in a perfect world, people would be able to get by without having to manually calculate their calories all the time, just to avoid getting fat. But from what I can see, intuitive eating is just not fit for purpose in today's food environment. At least in the developed world. Like, if the supermarket shelves were lined with only basic, nutritious, and appropriately calorie-dense foods, like fresh fruit and vegetables, unprocessed meats, etc., most people could probably manage to follow body cues and eat an appropriate amount for their body size. But when we're constantly surrounded by high-calorie, ultra-palatable snacks, drinks, and treats, and even seemingly innocuous foods are pumped full of sugar to make them addictive for consumers, it is lunacy to assume that people can just listen to their body and take in the right number of calories. The human body did not evolve in this kind of environment, and it is not equipped to deal with the problem of calorie moderation that it presents. The proof of this is in the pudding. Really. Pun intended. The rise in availability of these foods has coincided with, and no doubt contributed substantially to, the emergence of today's obesity epidemic. If we're going to solve the problem of large-scale obesity, we can't just sit back and let people try to figure things out based on intuition. Because it is clear that for much of the population, this is too difficult a task. My solution would be to promote a mixed approach. We don't necessarily need everyone to calculate calories religiously, though some people may elect to. We just need to make sure people have a rough idea of the calories they are taking in, including in things that people tend to forget about, like sugary drinks, as long as people have some idea of how much they can afford to eat, and how much they are actually eating. I think the particulars can be left to the intuitions and preferences of the individual. But that's just my thinking. Let me know what you would do in the comments.
One time I held my breath when I went swimming, and came up gasping for air. Another time I restricted my food and ended up binging later. Both times, my body was taking care of me.
Tell me how I'm supposed to breathe with no McDonald's. Can't breathe with no McDonald's. That's how I feel whenever you're not there. No McDonald's. No McDonald's. Okay, that wasn't funny. I'm sorry. But yeah, this post is dumb. Sure, we need food to survive, but we don't need to binge eat. You could have just stopped restricting and started eating normally again. There was no reason to binge, other than that you were hungry. And you wanted to, I guess. Whereas if you hold your breath underwater and don't come up for air, you'll, die. So there's that. Also, let's be real here. I know that binge eating is a compulsive behavior for a lot of people. And not something they have total control over. But come on, it's not an instinctual response like coming up for air when you can't breathe. You still have a choice. Even if it's a really difficult one to make. Describing your binge not as something that you did, but as something that your body did for you, is pretty disingenuous. And it's typical of the fat acceptance strategy, of depriving oneself of any and all agency. So that you can never be held accountable for anything. Weak. Real maturity involves facing up to one's ingrained self-destructive behaviors, trying one's hardest to resist harmful impulses, and perhaps most importantly, accepting responsibility, getting back up, brushing oneself off, and trying again when one fails in this regard. Sadly, though, maturity is one thing that seems to be in critically short supply among the ranks of the fat acceptance movement. Well, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed today's posts and my responses. Bad puns and unfunny dated references notwithstanding. What do you think? Is fat acceptance clownery obscuring real issues in the medical treatment of fat people? Is intuitive eating a good idea? Is binge eating like breathing? Let me know in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, or I'll make you go swimming in a pool of syrup like they did in Mythbusters that time. Just kidding, haha. Anyway, catch you later.